So hopefully you can hear me, and inshallah you can see the slides. So Assalamu alaikum everyone. So I have the last slot for today. I'm sure you're all very tired by now. So inshallah I'll try my best to get through things as soon as possible, inshallah. So we'll try and go through my slides and the information as quick as we can, inshallah. And if you have any questions, please do save them to the end, and inshallah I'll try and answer as many as we can. So the topic that I have today is about managing students' behavior in the class. So we're talking about on-site and online. So it's a mix, because I think everything at the moment is kind of mixed at the moment. We do have on-site classes happening and online. So inshallah, we'll try to incorporate both of the situations that you may be in. So just a brief introduction for myself, inshallah. My name is Erum Jaffri, and I'm an assistant head teacher. And I've been teaching for about approximately 18 years now in the primary sector. I have experience in both state and independent schools. I also have a very keen interest in Islamic educations and studies for children. I've worked in different madrasas, I've run a madrasa, and I'm quite keen and interested in going into madrasas and helping them with their management, teacher training, etc. So it is a keen interest of mine to help teachers, whether they're in schools or in madrasa type settings, to improve our teaching, because if we can be the best teachers that we can, obviously it's all of advantage and beneficial for our children. So in today's session, we're going to try and cover understanding behavior, the effective classroom management, getting to know your children. And then we'll talk about dealing with specific classroom difficulties. So we'll look at some practical solutions, and then also talking about using sanctions effectively. And again, looking at some practical ideas. Just to point out, and we did mention, I heard SEN come up just now in the previous session as well. The ideas and strategies that I'll give you today are not specific to SEN children. So if you do have children within your settings that have special educational needs, they will probably need a different approach. The ideas and the strategies that we use today is more generic and for the majority of the children in the classroom, which do work with SEN children sometimes, but sometimes obviously they need more specific and targeted strategies. Right, so to begin with, it's really important that we understand why children behave in the way they behave. So no child or even human is purposely naughty, let's say, and definitely we shouldn't really use the word naughty in regards to children, but they don't misbehave just because they feel like misbehaving. There is always a root cause or a reason for them misbehaving within the classroom or within the setting. So here we have 5 different, sort of ideas that have come up through research about why children misbehave. So we have biological. Children have a tendency to interact with the environmental influences around them, and this interaction informs their behavioral, how they behave. So it's basically the nature and the nurture involved in their development. So when you're dealing with behavior, it's really important that we provide and create a positive environment, and that will help the child show positive behavior. Behavioral is also very important. So this is another area which has been identified, and this is achieved by another event following an action. So there are 2 types of conditioning. So we could have conditional conditioning, and this is a behavior that's connected to a certain stimulus. So for example, on a Friday afternoon or during the day on a Friday in our school, children are normally really happy and excited. We normally have a very good day. And that's because they know at the end of the day, they're going to get golden time. They're going to have a special time, and they're sort of working towards that, and they have that in mind. We also have operant conditioning, which is the behavior which is connected to and repeated by rewarding the positive behavior and issuing sanctions for the negative behavior. So when we reward and sanction behavior, it becomes sort of programmed in the child's mind that they understand this is a behavior I should be doing if I want this, and shouldn't be doing, and what it would lead to. We also have cognitive behavior, and cognitive approach helps the child to judge and reason effectively and have a perception of their surroundings. So this means the way in which they behave is influenced by our thinking. So what sort of things we're saying to them, what they're thinking at that time will make them behave in a specific way. We have a systemic approach, and this systemic approach looks at targeting the individual's behavior within the system. So there's different systems around a child. A child will have their family, they'll have their friends, they'll have the whole school, their classmates, community, maybe clubs or activities they do out of school. These can all influence their behavior. So for example, when you have a child who maybe is experiencing lots of shouting and screaming at home, maybe violence, physical violence, they are more likely to display those sorts of behavior when they're around other children as well. Then finally, we have over here the psychodynamic approach, and this is used in more of a clinical setting, and it focuses on understanding and intervening by unraveling the past, maybe the conscious or unconscious experiences in order to help a child deal with them. So it's all about the experiences that a child has gone through previously, which may have led them to this. So maybe they've had a bad teacher in the past, maybe the teacher has done something that they haven't liked, or they felt like that they've been treated unfairly. This may have had an effect on them, and this is something that perhaps needs to be looked into and sort of spoken about and resolved. So the main thing, first of all, is to try and understand why our children are misbehaving. Okay. In regards to behavior, it's really important that before we begin our session, we realize that behavior management is all about being proactive, not about being reactive. So us as teachers, it's important that we have systems in place to ensure that we are doing our best to reduce the chances of misbehavior happening within our classroom. So the more proactive we can be, the less reactive we have to be. And as teachers, being the reactive is quite difficult, and things can get out of hand. So the best is for us to be as proactive as possible. And I think our session today was probably about more than half of it is about being proactive. And then inshallah, we'll talk about how you can react as well. So in regards to being proactive, you need to have effective classroom management. So you would have a well-managed classroom, you would have rules and routines which are structured and the children are aware of, positive relationships within the classroom, plenty of praise and rewards for the children. In a well-managed classroom, we've got these points here. So begin the year with a set of rules and routines which are understood by all the children. Make sure everyone understands what you're doing in your classroom, what your rules are, what your routine is. Have agreed rewards and positive reinforcements. So it's important that the rewards we decide for our classes is something that they would want. So for example, I mean, we have to have different rewards for different classes. In year 6, the year 6 boys might not be happy with maybe, a coloring book. We wouldn't want to give them a coloring book as a reward because it's not something they would want to work towards. So you have to be specific to the group of children you have. Have set sanctions for misbehavior. So the children should know what the sanctions are. They should be clear about them and when they would come about. Because you can't just all of a sudden punish a child or give a consequence to a child without them understanding where it's come from. Have a selection of options for dealing with disciplinary measure problems. So each school or each setting should have some sort of policy for their behavior. What strategies are you using within your setting so that everyone takes a sort of uniform approach and everyone can be consistent? Make use of your physical space. Make sure the environment is really very important for the children. When the children are all squashed up, maybe there's not enough space to move around. Maybe it's quite messy, there's books everywhere. This will lead to the child not being as comfortable as they can be and is possibly a reason for some misbehavior. Having well-planned lessons. So as we know, children are very intelligent and they know when you are planned and you're ready for a lesson. They can also pick up when you're, sort of trying to flag it and you're just trying to go with a lesson that you've just looked at for the first time in front of them. And this is an opportunity for them. They're not going to think, let me help out the teacher or let me be patient. They're going to think this is an opportunity and I can do, I can start talking or I can misbehave. Encourage respect and develop positive relationships. And this is really important. So it's about them respecting us and also us respecting them. So there's no point in us expecting all the children to respect us just because we're a teacher. I mean, that would be ideal, but especially in today's age, the children need us to respect them. And we should anyway. We should respect the children. We should show them that they're valued and that we respect them and we want to listen to them as well as them having to listen to us. Obviously, there is a barrier. You wouldn't want to mix it like a friendship type of thing, but you need to have respect for each other. Now, in regards to the rules, it's really important that they're clear, they're comprehensive, and they're something that you can enforce. So don't have unreasonable rules within your classroom. So something like never talk in the classroom. We know that will never happen. They are going to sit and talk. Also thinking about the language you use when you have rules. So trying to keeping away from don't, saying I will do something or I can do something. So I will walk sensibly around the school, rather than don't run around the school. Make sure they're understandable directions. So be, like I said before, be specific. So you can't just say to a child, be good. It's not a rule. What is it that you want them to do if they're going to be good? Are they going to listen? Are they going to be good listeners? Are they going to work hard? Be more specific. Also, it's important we go over these rules. So just because you went over them with the rules with the children on the first day of term doesn't mean that they're going to know them like as soon after, or remember them through a few weeks after. We need to keep reminding children of what we expect for them. They definitely should be displayed somewhere in the room, or if you're online, make sure you share them with them online so that they are aware and they remember that these are my rules and this is what I should follow. This helps when there is misbehavior because you can refer straight back to the rules and you can clearly state to the children that you know or you knew that these were the rules, and this rule is a rule that you have not met or you've not followed today. So you can refer back to it. You have something like a bit like a backup to talk about. Make sure the children understand the rules. Ideally, it's a good practice to actually write these rules with the children, because they will come up with the things that you want them to do. So like listening to each other or being kind to each other, they'll want that for themselves as well. So if they come up with the ideas themselves, they're more likely to stick to them as well. And be consistent in enforcing these outcomes, or the outcomes for breaches of these rules. So when something happens, make sure you do follow up. So if it is in one of your rules that you shouldn't talk when somebody else is talking, let's say, so we listen to each other. If somebody is talking when somebody else is talking, make sure you pick up on that. Don't just ignore that, so that they know that these rules mean something. They're not just there to look good or just there for reference. Okay. Then in regards to routines, it's very similar to our rules, actually, to discuss them. Let the children know what the routine is. If, let's say, you expect the children to come in and open up their books as soon as they come in, make sure you tell them that so they know what's expected from them, and remind them of that too. So if you are on top of it regularly, then you'll come to a point where the children will just know. So by the time, the children are a couple of weeks in, they're sort of doing exactly what they need to do because you've been in this routine and they know what they need to do. They need to take their books out. Perhaps they need to write the title on the board. Maybe need to underline their work. So they know, and they're clear about what's expected. Model it, show them what it is that you want them to do, because children don't often understand just what we say verbally. You might need to show them what it is that you want them to do. And again, be consistent. I mean, every now and then we'll do different things in lessons, and that's fine. And that is good enjoyment activities for the children. But generally try and keep a normal routine for the children. Be consistent with that routine so they are aware of what happens and are ready for these, the routine that you have. Now, praise, obviously, is very important. And, define the appropriate behavior when you give praise. So don't just say, well done. What is it that they've done that you're saying well done for? This will also prompt other children, perhaps. If someone is sitting nicely in class, you say, well done, you're sitting really nicely. Or well done, you put your hand up to answer the question. Then there'll be more children who will think, oh, I need to put my hand up before I, speak out, and the teacher would be happy with that. Praise a child immediately. So if you notice something, tell them straight away. Don't wait, till the next day or something. Give them prompt response. Vary the ways in which you praise them. Relate the praise to the effort. Yeah, this is really important. So it's not just about getting full marks in the test. Make sure those children who have tried hard and maybe done some good work, or tried to present their work really well. Find something that's good about it and say that you're pleased or you're happy with the effort that they've got. Praise their effort. And again, the perseverance and independence. These are all skills that the children should learn and should be praised for this. And if you praise this, then even if they're not getting full marks and they're not, doing the top of the class, which can lead to some frustration, which can lead to some behavior issues, they're still being praised, so they're not going to feel that need. Also, don't give praise continuously without any reason. There's no point in just saying well done all the time, because the child will lose its significance as well. And being sincere is also important. And then the last point here says, don't give praise and then follow it up with a criticism. So that can be really, disheartening for a child. You say, well done, this is an amazing piece of work, but I don't like how you're doing this or like doing that. So it's better if you give that praise, and then if there is something you'd like to pick up on, maybe leave us a bit of a gap and then pick up on that criticism or talk to them about it. In regards to rewards, like I said, it should be immediate. It should be consistent to maintain the desired behavior. So keep it with what you're expecting in your classroom. So if you've told them you want them to listen, reward them for listening. If you've told them you want them to do neat work, reward them for that neat work. Make sure it's something achievable that they can do. So, not like I said before, not expecting them to keep quiet for the whole lesson. Just ask them for that 10 minutes, we'd like you to sit quietly and listen to this. Then you can talk quietly with your partners. And make sure, obviously, you're being fairly rewarded. Children pick up on this straight away. Maybe they've sat really nicely throughout the lesson and you've not said anything to them, but another boy who's sat nicely, you praise them. Children feel this straight away. And if they feel like they haven't been given that recognition, then this could be a reason for them to start to misbehave. And here's just some types of rewards. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. And here we've got, examples of how you can reward. They can be intrinsic rewards. So we're, happy for them. They're trying to make them feel better for themselves. We can have some material rewards as well, but obviously it's much better if the child can feel the reward within themselves, feel happy about them achieving something. Things that you could do is like call home. This is a really nice one, actually, because often parents are only contacted when a child is misbehaving, and you have to tell them, complain about their child. So sometimes parents are actually shocked, they've had so many complaints about their child, and then you call them up and you tell them that, we're really happy with their behavior today. It really makes the parents quite happy. So that's really nice. And the children will be happy to hear this as well. You can give them maybe free time. You could, maybe extra playtime, some activities you can do with them, give them a bit of extra golden time or some, playtime. Certificates, tokens, something of position of responsibility, maybe some stickers. Obviously, like we said before, you have to see what works for your class. And if they're older children, you'll have to see what it is what they want. Often with the boys, they quite like to go outside and play football. So perhaps they can have a 5-minute extra football time or something. So you have to see, the children you have and what would work for them best. Now, here I have a few pointers about the level of impact in a classroom. And I want to ask you all, actually, as teachers, what would you feel are the most important out of these to make sure you have the highest impact in your classroom? Is it ability grouping, teacher expectations, teacher-student relationships, the feedback you give, student expectations, or having small class sizes? You could write it in the chat, perhaps, what you think makes the most impact. What's the most important, has a highest level of impact? It will be good to hear what you think. Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, excellent. So we've got some answers coming in, and I'm glad to see that majority of you have chosen the correct one. Teacher-student relationship is actually the most important. And without the teacher-student relationship, we can't get the others. We can't have good lessons. You can be a really good teacher. You might have the best lesson planned. However, if you don't have a good relationship with that class, it won't go the way you would want it to. So the most important one here is teacher-student relationship. All are important, giving feedback is important. What you expect from the children is important, but most important here, and this was a study that was carried out, and it said that the most impact was given from the teacher-student relationship. So we need to build that relationships. Children aren't just going to like us. Often they just don't like teachers. It's not something they'll naturally do. So we need to make them comfortable, welcoming. We need to be welcoming. So, when they come into the classroom, we'd say hello to them, we'd say salam to them, we'd welcome them in. You might ask how they're doing. So they can build some sort of relationship. They see you as somebody who they can talk to, as well as being their teacher. And like I said earlier, though, you do need to make sure you keep a balance. We don't want to cross the line and become their friends, but we want to have a balance with them where they know that this is our teacher, but she is somebody we can approach and talk to. Ensure that the children understand what is expected for them. So if you expect them to come in, sit down quietly, do let them know that, because they won't know that otherwise. And you can't just start telling them off for coming in a noisy way if they don't know that that's what you expected. And often, as teachers, all of us have different expectations. So their previous teacher that day may not have expected them to come in quietly. So it's a bit unfair for us to think that, they must come in quietly for us and without them knowing. So we should tell them what we expect from them. Create positive environment where the child feels relaxed and accepted. So yeah, try and keep things positive within the environment. Even if you pick up on something that's not so good, try and think of a positive statement rather than a negative to help that child feel comfortable there. Show an interest in the child's family, talents, goals, likes and dislikes. I mean, this really helps, especially when you've got children coming in. Sometimes in madrasas, you know, they've only come because their parents have sent them. Perhaps they don't really want to be there. But if you start to tap in and talk to them about what they enjoy, maybe relating some of the activities to what they like, then they will come a bit more closer to you, a bit more happier about being there. And then the learning and the behavior, it becomes more productive. Engage with the children during playtime or lunchtime. So try and have some interactions with them. It might even be just during your a free time when they're, you know, have some sort of activity. It's nice if you talk to them about the game they're playing or what they're thinking at that time. And again, that just builds a relationship. Treat them with respect, as we mentioned before, never embarrass or ridicule them. And we really have to be careful with language we use. I've seen teachers go in and say, you know, you're all acting like animals and all this sorts of thing. But if you think about that, how is that child going to feel? What effect does that have on the children? And if we're saying to them that that's how you're behaving, why would they want to not behave like that? We're actually, you know, giving them reason to behave in a specific way. Share all the success with the class. So everything that is a success, make sure you share that. What is it that they're doing well? You came into class really nicely. This class did a really lovely piece of homework, or you've done some really well in this term. What is it that they've done? Believe by recognizing their strength, that every child has the ability to learn and achieve. So just making sure that the children know that too, that wherever they are in, you know, ability wise, they're all progressing and they can all achieve. So making sure they believe that and recognize it as a teacher. Involve the children in making decisions regarding rules and activities within the classroom. So like we spoke about, the rules, you would help, you know, you'd ask them to set them with you. Even the rewards that you do with the children, you can help them, ask them to help you choose which rewards, because then if something they want, they will, you know, work towards getting those rewards. Then we have a positive talking, using a positive language, positive talk. So just like for an example here, I've got, if I was to say it positively, I could say, Craig, I'd like you to look at the board, thank you. Rather than saying, Craig, stop chatting and look at the board. So you can see how it's very different, just the play of words, but you're saying the same thing. So here I've covered it up, and it would be really nice maybe if somebody could maybe unmute themselves if they'd like, or you could write in the chat. How could this have been said negatively? Jody, if you know what day of the week it is, raise your hand, good girl. What do you think may have been said if it was in, you know, if you're using negative talk? You're welcome to unmute yourselves, or you can write it in the chat. Yeah, I can't see the participant list.
It could have been said in a negative way, like, Jody, I did not expect you to know what day it is today.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So they might, you're actually just you're showing that perhaps you didn't, you know that they would have known the answer. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So that's one way.
It might be so direct, like ask Joy, what is the day today? It's like you just asking them suddenly, putting them on the spot is not good.
Right. Yeah. That's right. Could be putting them on the spot. And another thing could be that because we're highlighting that we want you to raise your hand. So I've told you don't shout out. So rather than when somebody shouted out in your classroom, you could say, you know, if you know what day of the week it is, raise your hand, good girl. So you could prompt them to raise their hand. And I think that's what we just got in the chat there. Yes, exactly. Maybe raise your hand before you speak. Yeah. Okay. In saying negatively, we'd say, hey, Peter, stop running down the corridor. How could you say that in a more positive way? Again, you can unmute yourself if you like.
I think the nice way to say, I would like to stop running down, thank you, or might be you will hurt yourself if you just running around. Yeah.
Excellent. Yep, and we've got the brother said, Peter, walk down the corridor. I would like you to, yes, Peter, please remember to walk down the corridor. Excellent. And yeah, this is similar what we got here to what we've got here. Peter, remember to walk down the corridor sensibly. Thank you. So you can see how you just play with words, but you can say something more positively, and that keeps the child a bit more positive rather than them seeing you as giving them an order and, you know, saying something negative to them. Okay, so really important, the language that we use with children. Seating, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but seating can be really important. So how have you sat the children? Are you able to see their faces? Can you see when they start fidgeting? Can you see when their eyes start wandering? Be aware of what's happening in the classroom so that you can try and pick up on any behavior before it escalates to the next level, before it becomes difficult to control. Okay, so like if two children start whispering to each other and you're talking or you're teaching, deal with that straight away so that you see it and you deal with it, rather than those two talking, then the next two children talking and the ones behind them start talking, then it's more difficult for you to sort that out and to deal with. During the lesson, it's really important that you wait till you have all of the children's full attention. Make sure you don't start talking until they're sitting ready to listen, and wait until they're ready. And then if you do that a few times, they'll know that the teacher's not going to start until we're ready. So, you know, they'll hopefully start to remember that. Check the children understand in your lesson. Make sure they understand, because that's also another reason why a child will misbehave, because if they haven't understood the task, they think, okay, what should I do? Rather than actually, you think it's quite simple, they should just ask and they should get on with the task. But for them, it's a reason for them just to misbehave, perhaps talk to someone next to them, do something disruptive. So make sure everyone has understood the task and has got on with it, okay? And yeah, the last point was just like what I said. When some whispering starts and it becomes more contagious, or when everyone starts doing it, it becomes more difficult to control. You can use different strategies. So important behavior strategies should be there in your classroom. You should have something that the children know. So you tell them that this is what we're going to use. So are you going to use a countdown system? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, you know, silence all around has begun. So different schools have different sayings. Some of them use this last one, give me 5. So you show the children show 5. That means they're stopped and they're listening to you. So you should have a system in your classroom. What is it that you're going to do? Some teachers do this clapping pattern. Some of them have different sayings. Again, it will depend on the class age that you have. It might just be, you know, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and everyone stops. So you have a system so the children know what, again, is what you're expecting. Yeah, so they know what you would like them to do. Now we're just going to move on to talking to you about you as a teacher. So we've got self-management. It's really important that you self-manage yourself. You know your children. You ascertain the child's point of view, the child's point of view, and you create the time and space within your classroom. Okay, so inappropriate behavior, these are warning signs. Restlessness, boredom, inactivity, being disrespectful, bullying, these are just some examples of what you might see, and these are warning signs for you in the classroom. So a systematic approach and display, so making sure that your environment, like I said, is important, that it's friendly, it's important for the child's mood and its learning and the learning. So tidy, organized environments are obviously always the best. The use of displays within the classroom is also important, part of the organization, so you can have reminders up about what you expect from the children. You should celebrate the children's achievements. So when children are doing something really well, when they've got a reward for something, maybe they're a good listener, maybe they've done some excellent effort in some work, make sure you try and display it so that they can feel like the sense of achievement. And then also maybe talk to or share with other classes, again, share with parents, teachers, head teachers, make sure the good work or a good achievement is shared. So it might not just be work, it might be obviously behavior. What is it that you want to celebrate, and share it with others? Now here, we haven't got time, but there is a video. Inshallah, when the slides are shared with you, you'll be able to watch it. But this lady goes through the 7, teacher behavior mistakes that we make as teachers. I'm just going to briefly touch on them. So lack of clarity about expectations. When we tell the children that we want them to sit quietly, it's very important we tell them what we mean by sitting quietly. Are they allowed to whisper? Because to a child, sitting quietly might mean that I can quietly whisper to the other children. Or do I expect them to sit in silence and they're not meant to talk at all? So give clear expectations. Lack of consistency in expectation. So again, like I mentioned before, if one child is talking out, maybe not putting their hand up, and you pick up on it, make sure you do the same for another child, because children will pick up on that. And it's not fair. We need to make sure we treat all of the children the same. Shouting is another big one for us as teachers. So you will probably notice within the classroom that as we raise our voice, they raise their voice as well. So the louder we get, the louder the children get. And often when we start to shout, I mean, the class doesn't sit there and feel sorry for us and think, oh, the teacher's shouting, you know, we're feeling a bit bad. They actually are, sometimes it can be quite amusing for them to see us all get worked up, and, you know, can you know, it can be something that they can get excited about, that we've got all worked up and they've managed to get to us. So the best thing is to stay as calm as possible. And shouting is never the best solution. We can use our voices, and actually taking your voice even lower sometimes can have the same effect, a better effect actually, than raising your voice, so that maybe you can start to get quieter. Or actually we could use hand movements as well. We can use our eyes too, you know, just look at that child, maybe point to a child or do something. You could go next to the child who is doing something that's wrong and just whisper it in their ear. It can have more effect than actually shouting at the class. Letting your emotions rule. I mean, this is important as teachers, obviously, trying to make sure if a child is getting us worked up, if they're not listening to us, it's not just about them not listening to us. We might just feel, you know, this is a child, he should be listening to us. Why is he not listening to me? If this is happening, I think we as teachers need to sort of take a step back. We need to try not to become aggressive with them, obviously, and have that face-to-face sort of argument, because the more we say, the more they'll say back to us, and it can become sort of like a fight of words. It's best if we stay calm, and perhaps you can say to them just simply, you know, it seems that we can't discuss this just now. We'll talk about it once you've calmed down, or we'll talk about this in a little while, rather than it becoming, you know, you yourself getting all wound up as well. Asking rhetorical questions is important as well, because we ask so many questions as a teacher, but sometimes we ask questions which really, you know, after we've asked them, we think, why did we do that? So let's say a child has just got up out of their place and they're walking around. You might ask them, why are you out of seat? Why are you walking around? But we actually don't want to know that. What we're trying to say to them is go and sit down in your seat. Well, if you ask that question, you're opening them up to say, oh, miss, I was bored and I just wanted to walk out and do this and do that. But we don't really want to know that. What we want to just point out to them is that they need to go and sit back in their seat. So don't ask the rhetorical questions, just be specific with what you want. Another point here is about sticking to the front of the room. Often as teachers, we just stand at the front, but it's important for us to move around the classroom so that all of the children know that we're sort of around for all of them, that they will be seen as well, or we can pick up on things that they're doing too. They say, I mean, research has shown that normally as a teacher, you go towards your more dominant side. So often if it's your right hand, you're right-handed, or your right side, you might be around the right-hand side a lot more. So we should try and make sure we move around. You know, they say you should touch all four corners of your classroom, so you've been and seen all around, being around all of the children. Sorry, I'm wary of the time, so I might not go through everything. I mean, here's a list about what makes a good teacher. The children like teachers who are empathetic, that they can trust, that give praise. You know, there's a whole list of things that they like, and it's important that we can show them these attributes. Okay, dealing with specific classroom difficulties. Now, we'll go through the different ones. So this is called, we call these ABC charts. And with this, what we look at what happens before the behavior occurs, the observed behavior, and the positive or negative results of the behavior. So this can help us to understand why a child has done something. So when you have a child who's regularly misbehaving in the classroom, we need to try and see what happened just before that behavior, so that we can work out what was it that, you know, what was it that initiated this behavior. So for example, Liam receives no attention or recognition from his teacher when he displays good behavior. So this boy has shown some good behavior but hasn't been recognized. Now this has been something that now is going to make him behave. So Liam shouts out in the class. He disrupts other children, preventing them from working. He repeatedly says he cannot do this work. So this is all a reaction to what he felt just before. So the consequence is the teacher keeps him in at break time. The teacher sits next to him and helps him with his work. So here we can see that there was a reason, and the important thing to do here is to try and work out what the reason for this behavior was and talk to him about it and see, then actually as a teacher acknowledge, okay, I'm sorry that perhaps I didn't see that you did this, or, or perhaps you did see it and you say, well, I saw it, but we were moving on to something and I didn't mention, but I was going to tell you at the end of the lesson. But it's nice if you have some dialogue with the children. So when a child can explain to you what happened, what upset them, or what made them behave like that, that's a really good skill. And as teachers, especially with younger ones, we spend a lot of time trying to work out what happens before this behavior. It could be that somebody else in the classroom has said something to them and that's bothered them and then they misbehave. So this is an important, strategy to use with children that misbehave. This graph shows us sort of the time intensity when a child begins to misbehave. So like here on the baseline, the child is fine. A trigger happens, something happens to make them want to misbehave. It begins to escalate. Now, as a teacher, we need to try and intervene here. So let's say a child starts talking at that time or shouting out. It's important that we deal with that here. So like we use one of those positive statements, maybe you could say, oh, I really liked how you put your hand up before. Can you make sure you put your hand up again this time? Or I'd like you to put your hand up again. Or when you want to speak, make sure you put your hand up. So let them know that you're acknowledging something, but you're trying to de-escalate it at this time. However, if something happens, then something might happen. There might be an incident. Then they'll need a bit of time for recovery. And then it's best actually when something happens in the classroom, you don't respond or try and discuss it with the child straight away. If they've misbehaved, if they've done something, maybe they banged the table or they pushed the chairs, don't try to talk to them at that time and say, why did you do that or what's happened? Let them recover from that. Tell them what they did was inappropriate. Get them to maybe sit down or perhaps have a timeout, but talk to them about it afterwards once they've calmed down. Majority of children, once they're calmed down, they're able to talk about what happened, why it happened. And then it's at this point, we need to discuss with them about how they can manage this. So why is this making me angry? What can we do about this? So it's really important that we have that relationship. This all goes back to the relationship with the pupil. They need to be comfortable with you. If they think that you're just going to shout at them, they're not going to want to talk to you. So make sure they have that good relationship with you so they can talk to you and you can help them. And these sort of strategies in their education will help them actually just for life. And that's, the really important role that we play as teachers. We can help these children for life. We can teach them these strategies to help them be the best that they can be, inshallah. Redirection always helps. So like if a child is disruptive at the beginning of the lesson, when the books are being handed out, redirect their attention by choosing them to hand out the books. Yeah. So just change them from what they're doing rather than saying, stop being disruptive, just say, give them some other task. If a child finds it difficult to line up sensibly, ask them to stand at the front of the line and lead the other children. So try and have a strategy in place. Again, this is about being proactive so that before things escalate, you've got some sort of plan in action. This is important as sanctions. Make sure it's understood by children, staff, and parents and carers. And parents and carers are quite important here because you'll find that children, you will deal with a situation at school. So if they've been given a sanction, they'll go home and tell their side of the story to their parents. So often in schools, you get parents contacting you saying, my child is saying that he was given 10 minutes, he had to miss 10 minutes of playground because of what another child had done. Interestingly, though, when you talk to the parents, the child hasn't mentioned what they did. So it's important that you have a communication with parents and explain to them what's happened so that they know what sanctions being put in place and why. Also with children, sometimes they have no idea why they're missing playtime. And you ask them and they say, I don't know. Or the teacher just said that I had to. They have to understand what it is that they've done that's made them have this sanction. Also, obviously, the sanctions need to be fair. So if one child has hit another child and you have a severe sanction, let's say, make sure if this happens with another child, you have the same sanction because they need to see that this is fair. Consistency applied according to the school's behavior policy. Again, like the same rule for everyone. And each time, make sure you are consistent. A logical response to a behavior. Don't give irrational sort of consequences or sanctions, and be realistic with the misbehavior displayed. So sometimes, even as teachers, like maybe a small thing has happened and this really isn't that big, but maybe we're having a bad day, or maybe all of the children have been doing something that has really wound us up that lesson. We may react in a different way. So just make sure you're realistic with the misbehavior that's displayed, and you just follow your policy and what you have in regards to the sanctions. So sanctions could include maybe missing a bit of break time, maybe sitting to the side, maybe a bit of time out. Maybe they could miss a part of an activity that, maybe they have computer time, maybe they miss 5 minutes, and you explain to them that because you were not misbehaving, or maybe because you were not listening in this lesson, you will miss 5 minutes of this lesson. So make sure you explain it to them. Hopefully then that will help them not to do that again. Again, obviously it will depend on what it is that they've done. So your sanction will be relative to the misbehavior they've shown you. When to use the sanctions: when they're breaking class rules, when they're affecting the education and well-being of other children, preventing the teacher from teaching, failing to follow instructions, or obviously serious incidences like hitting, kicking, spitting, all of these that you may have. So obviously there's a reason, and the children should be aware that these are the things that will cause you to have a consequence, or that there will be a sanction for. Now, this is a reflection, and now this is something important for both teachers and students to do. And here we remind ourselves, so we're all human. So the children need to actually have some time to reflect on what's happened. They need to describe, what actually happened today. How were they feeling at that time? And why did they react like that? What was good and what was bad about this experience? And maybe they learned something from this experience. What sense can you make of the situation? What else could you have done? Okay, so with the child, they could think about what could they have done next time. So if somebody had said something to them that really annoyed them, what could they have done? They could have maybe told the teacher, so the teacher could have dealt with it. So what else could they have done? But then also us as teachers, we always should go away and reflect on, evaluate our interactions with the children as well. Thinking about, let's say you've had some disruptive behavior in the classroom. How could you have dealt with it differently? If it didn't go like, it should have done, what could you do next time? How could you make it better next time? I remember having like a dialogue with a child who was really being quite disrespectful. And every time I said something, he just kept saying something back to me. And it did get quite frustrating. Then when I went away and I thought about it, I thought, really, I should have just stopped that dialogue with him. I shouldn't have continued with him. And I should have gone back to him and spoke to him afterwards. And actually the next day I went back and we talked about it, and he told me what was happening. And it was good to have that discussion, but it was just really good as teachers to reflect on what we can do better next time. Because we always have these sorts of incidences where we can always try and improve ourselves as teachers. So both the child and the teacher should have some reflection time on this sort of misbehavior. Okay, I'm trying to wind up now. Just a reminder, actually, then, to end with, a child will repeat a behavior if it's being rewarded. Okay, so the good behavior needs to be rewarded so that they can keep doing that. A child will be less likely to repeat a behavior if sanctions are issued. So if we are clear with our expectations and we give a sanction, hopefully that will deter the child from doing that behavior again. If there's no consistency with rewards and sanctions, then it's likely the child will continue to display the unwanted behavior. So we have to be consistent in our approach. And the more attention the teacher gives to the child's behavior, the more likely it is that the behavior will be repeated. So if we keep focusing on it and we keep bringing it up, let's say, or we keep saying about it, talking about it, it's more likely that it will be repeated, because sometimes the children just want attention. So if you keep saying stop talking, or you keep talking, or stop shouting, he's getting that attention, let's say, or she's getting that attention. She'll keep doing it because she wants attention. So make sure that you try and use different strategies. Like I said, talk to them quietly, maybe talk to them after class, think about another way rather than giving them that attention, constant attention. Yeah, and that actually brings us to the end of our session. I think, yes, I had a message about sharing the slides. We'll share the slides, inshallah, so that you can read through, because I did rush to read some of the slides there. As with any training, it's important that we all sort of self-assess ourselves. So before we ask, I open up for any questions, it would be good if everyone thinks about one thing that they can take away from today's session. So one thing that you can do in regards to behavior management in your classroom that hopefully can help you. One thing that you might change or improve on. So it'll be useful if you can think about something, because they say when you go for training, if you put something into action straight away, that shows that you've actually taken something away from the training. Often we do trainings and then we don't make any changes. So it's a good practice to take something, even if it's 1 point, and try and put that into practice, inshallah. Okay, thank you. So if there's any questions, my email address is there if anybody would like to send me any questions later after the session. Okay, thank you. Okay, Brother Misam, shall I hand back to you?